Okay, all praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High, God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and peace to you in the name of his Son. I count it truly a blessing each and every single time that I can come before the word of God, and never do I count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to get right into today's lesson, and the title is "You Can't Judge Me." You can't judge me. That is the mindset of so many today. And what prompted this is I was reading an article about how a politician made some comments about people falling away from Christianity because it's too judgmental. Now, in today's Christianity, we know it's false. Okay, so but that's the real reason why people should fall away from it. But it just speaks to the fact that people are unwilling to accept correction, and they will take scriptures and New Testament writings out of context to substantiate their behavior. When the Bible is not telling you that you cannot judge, what the Bible is telling you is that you should not judge unrighteously. So let's go to Matthew, the 7th chapter, and find out just where this notion that nobody can judge comes from. This is Matthew, the 7th chapter. I want to pick it up at verse 1. And it says, "Judge not, that ye be not judged." So now if we close the book here, that's the end of discussion. But see, the problem is we can't close the book here. What we need to do is continue to read. If we continue to read, we'll understand in context that he's not telling you you can't judge. In addition to some other texts that we'll read, we will certainly understand that no, you are to judge, but it's about righteous judgment. So again, he says, "Judge not that you be not judged." So is this saying that you can't judge somebody's behavior? If someone says they're in a homosexuality and you say that's wrong, you can't judge me. Well, brothers and sisters, you just think about it. Everywhere else you get judgment. You go to a courtroom, you get judgment. Why? Because you broke the law. Well, there's a law in the Bible. There's Torah, there's mitzvah. Let's see if the one who said that came to do away with the law. Why am I reading that? It's because it is by the law that it shows you what's right or wrong. That's the criteria for right and wrong. That's what you make a judgment according to. This is Matthew, the 5th chapter, and verse 17. It says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill." So now this is Jesus. He didn't come to do away with the law. It said, "For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled." So the law is not done away with. Then he said, "Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven." And ironically, that's what they're doing in many of these churches. Many of the churches have done away with the law. So even with that, even with having no standard, and when them saying all you have to do is believe, and that's it, pay your tithes now, that even though that's law, but they tell you that the law is done away with in many of these churches, people still, that's not good enough. They still, they don't want to have any type of shame, any type of rebuke for what they've done. But that's what we need in order to correct our behavior. So he says, "Whosoever there shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so." And I want to make another point. The one who was saying this, he showed you, he said, "Follow me." He's the one, he walked this earth as a flesh and blood man without sin. We should take that into consideration on our daily walk to be like him. He even said, "Be ye perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." So he said, "Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven." Then he goes on to tell you, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not kill. And whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire." So he's telling us how even we should think. He's so far away from lawlessness, is not even funny. When you really understand, it should put something on your mind like, wow, I have to change my way of thinking. Here's another example. He said, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not commit adultery." That's one of the 10 commandments, as is thou shalt not kill, which is interpreted as thou shalt not murder. Verse 28 says, but I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. So you shouldn't look at another man's wife to lust after her, even in your mind. Now see, but understand, when you commit adultery and then you say, and somebody says, you shouldn't commit adultery, that's sin. Then you say, you can't judge me. Wait a minute. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. Let's go to 1 Corinthians and see something that Paul the apostle said about judgment. 1 Corinthians, the 2nd chapter, in verse 14, he said, but the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. He goes on to write, but he that is spiritual judges all things. Yet he himself is judging no man. In other words, he's judging according to what? According to the law, because he's dealing with a spiritual mindset. Let's see something about the law. Let's go to the epistle to the Romans, chapter 7, and see something about the law. Peace to everybody that's listening. It's good to see you. Romans, the 7th chapter, and verse 12. Paul writes, wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy and just and good. So that's what we know about the law, right? That it is good. So, and it's also spiritual. This is verse 14. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. See, so it is that carnal nature which doesn't want the judgment, because nobody wants to truly, the natural mindset is not to be confined by any law, but rather to fulfill the lust of the flesh. That's why it's written, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Thoughts of men are evil continually. Madness is in the heart of man while they live. Men, and after that they go to the dead. While they live, and after that they go to the dead. Peace to MC Israel. That's what man's condition is, right? So that's his natural mindset. And the big problem is you don't have preachers standing on the wall telling people what thus saith the Lord. So now you could even walk around and not be ashamed of anything that you're doing. When, again, that shame, and it, even bringing it to your attention so that you can change, so that you are not cast into the lake of fire. Because we don't have the right to violate his law. That's what man really doesn't understand. You can make the decision to do so, but you should understand that there are consequences for doing so. And when somebody's coming to judge you in the sense of telling you what thus saith the Lord and how you're in error based on that, you should be thanking that person. That's what a wise man, when he receives correction, he's thankful. But the fool is mad and talking about, thou shalt not, you can't judge me. That's not, I've literally seen that on the street. You tell somebody, hey, homosexuality is wrong. You can't judge me. Your Bible say that. You reading out of context. So we understand that the law is spiritual, and that a spiritual man judges all things. Let's see an example of Paul judging. This is 1 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. And it's all about, brothers and sisters, getting it right. That's what it's about. 1 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, and we won't pick it up at verse 1. 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 1. He wrote this epistle about a congregation. Now, this is amongst believers. This is not even in the world. This is amongst believers. It reads in verse 1, it is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as is not so much as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife. So now, what is that? That's a man dealing with his father's wife, not the man's natural mother, but a wife that a woman that his father has taken as his wife, what we would call in the West a stepmother. What does he say? Verse 2. And ye are puffed up and have not rather mourned that he that have done this deed might be taken away from among you. So what is he saying there? He's saying this sin is common among you. And in addition, it's gotten so bad, even one would take his father's wife, and you are indifferent to sin. See, you can't be indifferent to sin. You can't sit up in the midst of a congregation as a spiritual leader and allow any and everything to go on and say it's going to be all right. It's when it's really not. Once you see, sin is starts off like a small ember, like a flame, and then you seen in California how a small flame, somebody could throw a cigarette out of a window and it could burn and turn into a raging inferno. That's how sin is. You have to stamp out sin. You have to address it. So he says, and ye are puffed up and have not rather mourned that he that have done this deed might be taken away from among you. Verse 3, for I verily as absent in body, but present in spirit, what does he say? Have judged already, as though I were present concerning him that hath so done this deed. So he said, I'm not there, but I've already judged the matter. Now, what is he judging the matter according to? Because the issue, he said, is even one that he's dealing with his father's wife. Let's look at what the law says, because that is what he's using. The law, which is holy, the commandment, just and good. Let's see in Leviticus the 18th chapter what Paul is addressing here. This is Leviticus the 18th chapter. And we'll pick it up in Leviticus 18 and verse number 6. Because one of the things here is that we read in Leviticus 18 the various types of sexual impropriety, things that you should not do. Leviticus 18 and 6. It says, none of you shall approach to any that is near of kin to him, meaning being related, blood kin. It says to uncover their nakedness, I am the Lord. So there shouldn't be any intercourse amongst relatives in this regard. Then he gives some examples. The nakedness of thy father or the nakedness of thy mother shalt thou not uncover. So that shouldn't take place. She is thy mother, thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. Then it says, the nakedness of thy father's wife, thou shalt not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness. So he makes a distinction. Not only should a man not deal with his mother in that way, but also he should not deal with his father's wife in that way. Let's hold our finger here and see another example of that. See, the law is talking about this, and that's not what you should be doing. Genesis the 35th chapter. Genesis the 35th chapter. Let's read something here. Of what took place with Reuben and Jacob. This is Genesis 35 and verse 22. It says, and it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land. That says Israel is talking about Jacob, the man. It says that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. Now see, that was his father's wife. A concubine was like a secondary wife. That was his wife. So that's what he did. And let's see what he said about that later on. This is Genesis the 49th chapter. Genesis 49, and because he's going to give the blessing of the sons. And he says in verse 2, I just pick it up in verse 2. It said, gather yourselves together and hear ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Right? Because he told them what was going to befall him in the last days. And listen what he said about Reuben. He said, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. But then he says something in verse 4. He says, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed. Then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. That was talking about what we read in Genesis 35 and 22, when he dealt with one of his wives. Well, this is what Leviticus the 18th chapter, verses 6 through 8 is referring to. And that's what, when we get to 1 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, in verse 1, that's in verses 1 through 3, that's what Paul is addressing, and that's what he's judging. And then he says, in 1 Corinthians 5:4, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, when ye are gathered together in my spirit with the power of our Lord Jesus Christ, to deliver such an one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord. He's saying you have to address that. He said, your glorying is not good. Know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? See, a little sin. See, if you don't just see, judgment is important. He said, a little sin leaveneth the whole lump. Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a little lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. Therefore let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. And his word is truth. So now let's go back to John the 7th chapter, or Matthew the 7th chapter. And let's read in context what's really being said. So now we have those instances, right? Now we can go back and have with more insight. And now we're going to read in context what's said in Matthew 7. And we're going to read the verse that we started with, which is verse 1. Matthew 7 and verse 1. It says, judge not that ye be not judged. Okay. But what kind of judgment? He says, for with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. So he's talking about hypocrisy. That's what he's talking about. Hypocrisy and judgment. And he said, just like you judge, you're going to be judged. He said, and with what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. And why? And then he said something. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? In other words, what's a mote? A mote is like a splinter, like a little speck of something. So now you have, your brother might have that in his eye, and you have a beam in your eye, and you say, hey, how dare you do this? But you're not addressing your own hypocrisy. That's, for example, that's why he told, when they brought they said, we found this woman in the very act of adultery. The law says stone her. What sayest thou? And he wrote on it. He ignored the people. He was writing on the ground, and they continued to press the issue. He said, he who was without sin, let him cast the first stone. He who was without sin, let him cast the first stone. And they were convicted in their conscience, and they dropped their stones and left. And he said, woman, where art thou thine accusers? Don't none condemn you? They said, nay, Lord, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. They were dealing in unrighteous judgment. Number one, if she was caught in adultery, what does the law say in regard to adultery? It says the law says the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. The man and the woman. So if that's the case, and you found the woman and caught her in the very act, where was the man? It is peculiar in that instance that there was no man there. So they're trying to trip him up, but he put something on their minds about their own behavior. And they looked at within, he caused them to look within themselves in their own hypocrisy, and they walked away. So this is what Jesus is talking about. He's talking about hypocrisy. So he says in verse 3, and why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? You have a major problem that you have to deal with. You can't talk about your brother's problem or address his problem before you address your own. That's what he's talking about. He says, thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. See, once you get yourself together, then you can say something to your brother. That's how it works. You can't be, how dare you look at that woman who is another man's wife, and you say, oh, you're right. You shouldn't do that. That is right. But you committing adultery with the man's wife, and then committing adultery with another man's wife. But you telling this man he shouldn't look at. Yeah, you shouldn't be lusting after that man's wife, but you are literally committing the act of adultery. See, and then you're saying, how dare you look at this woman? That's unrighteous judgment. And the same thing would be if you were saying, you a thief, you stealing. Well, you lying. You see what I'm saying? So That's what he's talking about when he says, thou shalt not judge. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we at the Household of Faith meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel, as well as at www.israelteach.org. If you've been edified through the ministry and would like to leave a donation, you can do so on our website, www.israelteach.org. We also have Bible study every Friday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, that's every Friday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I want to give you the personal meeting ID number. The personal meeting ID number, give me one moment, please. The personal meeting ID number for that Zoom, we meet on Zoom, is 602-961-1318. Again, that number is 602-961-1318. Okay. That, if you want to, that's 8 p.m. Central Standard Time every Friday night. Okay. So let me put that information in the chat. Can't do it, huh? Okay. So you're more than welcome to come and if you have any questions, they'll be answered according to the best of my ability, according to what thus saith the Lord, because that is our standard. And finally, brothers and sisters, there are books available that I've written. Into Egypt Begin with Ships, The Pagan Origins of Christian Holidays, Killing Black Innocents, the program to control African American reproduction from slavery's end to the present day self-inflicted genocide, Hair Like Wool, Feet Like Burned Grass, The Color of Jesus and Burning Shoes Concerning the Messiah, But Then Should Be Great Tribulation, and In Defense of Biblical Polygyny. All these books are available again. Barnes and Noble, Amazon.com. They're available cheaper actually on our website. So that's just something to think about. And additionally, we had a good first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. Pray that you're enjoying the Feast of Tabernacles. Brother Leo's household came, and that was a beautiful thing. We fellowshipped and had a wonderful time. And Brother Josh, so they came from far, and Brother Joshua came away from Arkansas and got baptized. He also brought his good friend as well. Was able to talk to those brothers and had a good time. And just want to say peace to everybody that came and visited and fellowship with us. And again, I hope that you're enjoying the tabernacles. I hope mainly that you were edified through the spiritual food that was provided through this ministry. And with that, brothers and sisters, it's always my prayer that you were edified.